This book is called Made to Stick. It's a practical guide that teaches you how to make your ideas resonate deeply with people. What does sticky mean? Ideas or concepts that people remember vividly and can't forget are considered sticky ideas. Let me give you an example to better understand what sticky means. You've probably seen this urban legend multiple times. A man is approached by a beautiful woman at a bar, then gets lured to a hotel. When he wakes up, he finds himself in a bathtub filled with ice. In panic, he calls emergency services. The operator asks him to check if there's a tube behind him. After confirming, the operator tells him that one of his kidneys has been stolen. Besides this legend, you might also vividly remember myths like the Great Wall is the only man-made structure visible from space, or Coca-Cola can dissolve human bones. These are sticky stories. Almost everyone who hears them once can vividly retell them to friends and family. On the contrary, what's not sticky? Things like last week's meeting instructions, the content of the book you read yesterday, or the main points from your last training session. You probably don't remember these because they were dry and presented unengagingly. Sticky ideas are needed everywhere in life, whether you're a parent or teacher trying to educate a mischievous child, a manager needing to convince subordinates, or a salesperson trying to win over clients. Sticky ideas are memorable. The authors are the Heath brothers, who previously co-wrote the international bestseller, Switch, which was translated into 17 languages and sold in 18 countries, demonstrating their significant influence. Chip Heath is a professor of organizational behavior at Stanford Business School, while Dan Heath is a former Harvard Business School researcher. Their book, Made to Stick, has become a classic, becoming an international bestseller upon publication. Let's explore two aspects today. First, what makes ideas sticky, and second, how to make ideas sticky. First, let's discuss what makes ideas sticky. We often think some ideas are inherently interesting while others are boring, but the authors disagree. An idea's stickiness doesn't depend on content, but on how it's expressed. The way we communicate ideas can lead to vastly different results. Why is this? Let's examine what happens when people receive new information. One obstacle preventing our ideas from being effectively communicated is the curse of knowledge. This means that once someone possesses certain knowledge, they often forget that others don't understand it. The challenge in sharing knowledge lies in our inability to understand the mindset of those who don't possess our knowledge. Teachers and students, CEOs and employees, politicians and voters, marketers and consumers all struggle with this information asymmetry. The curse of knowledge is the primary enemy of sticky ideas, and it's somewhat unavoidable. For instance, a doctor who has studied for 10 years becomes more skilled but may find it increasingly difficult to communicate with patients. Most people have experienced this. Doctors speak at length using medical terminology while patients remain confused about their condition. Therefore, the way we express ideas can make a huge difference in communication effectiveness. If doctors remind themselves before patient consultations, "What I understand, my patients might not. I shouldn't use technical terms they won't understand." When explaining complex concepts to users, we need to break down professional jargon into digestible pieces. Someone asked if this just means changing how we talk. Exactly. By presenting ideas in an engaging way, your message becomes sticky. Let's discuss how to do this. The author presents 6 principles to check if your ideas are sticky. Simple, unexpected, concrete, credible, emotional, and stories. To make your ideas memorable, you need to follow these 6 principles. Let's go through them one by one. To make ideas memorable, the first step is simplicity. We need to find the core message and eliminate distracting elements, as it's difficult to make wise decisions in unpredictable and chaotic situations. Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, the author of The Little Prince, defined elegance in design. Perfection is achieved not when there is nothing more to add, but when there is nothing left to take away. Creative designers should pursue the same goal. Too many choices lead to decision paralysis. Here's an example. Imagine you're a college student facing 2 choices one evening. 1. Attend a lecture by your favorite author who's only visiting campus that night. 2. Study at the library. This seems like an easy choice. Only 20% of the first group chose the library. Clearly, a rare lecture is more appealing than studying. However, when a third option was added, watching a foreign film you've wanted to see, the percentage of students choosing the library increased to 40%. Why? Because offering two interesting alternatives to studying actually makes people less likely to choose either one. While not logical, it's human nature. The more choices we have, the harder it becomes to decide. So how do we achieve simplicity? First, prioritize information, like writing a news article. Use the inverted pyramid structure. Lead with the most important information, followed by details in descending order of importance. This ensures readers get the crucial information first, regardless of their attention span. In presentation, lead with the key points, just like a news article, freeing people from decision anxiety to focus on what truly matters. Another example is the perpetually failing New Year's resolution list. Every January 1st, millions drag themselves out of bed, hopefully making numerous resolutions. Exercise more, spend less, work harder, keep the house clean, while still having more time for fun. How is this possible? It would take a miracle. The bestseller, Willpower, tells us that trying to make multiple life changes simultaneously often results in no changes at all. It's not about lacking willpower. It's about having too many items on your list. Nobody has enough willpower to achieve everything at once. It's better to make and stick to one resolution that's challenging enough. Sometimes even one goal feels like too much. Beyond prioritization, simplicity also means leveraging existing knowledge. To pack more information into brief expressions, the best approach is to trigger knowledge that's already in your audience's mind, like finding the right target. For those unfamiliar with grapefruit, describing it as a smaller version of pomelo is much easier to understand than explaining it as a citrus subtropical fruit. Using pomelo as a reference point allows us to build connections. Great economics professors start their courses with simple examples, teaching students with no economic background while gradually increasing the complexity. While people often want to precisely explain everything at once, the better approach is to start with familiar information and slowly build upon it. Simple analogies can be powerful. For instance, Disney Parks calls their employees cast members and their work performances. This straightforward comparison perfectly captures the core value of their employees. Staff understand they can't slack off at work, just as stage actors would never smoke or chat during a performance. Having employees view their roles as stage performances rather than routine maintenance has been crucial to Disney Parks' tremendous success. We've just covered the first principle of simplicity. Lead with the main point and familiar information. Now, let's discuss the second principle that makes ideas memorable: unexpectedness. To capture attention, the most basic method is breaking conventions. Constant, unchanging sensory stimuli often become invisible to us. The human brain is naturally sensitive to changes. For example, the widely believed myth that the Great Wall is the only man-made structure visible from space has unexpected qualities that make it memorable, even when later disproven. We all know movie theater popcorn is junk food, but how do we convince people to avoid it? Consider these two approaches. The Center for Science in the Public Interest analyzed movie theater popcorn and found that a medium serving, cooked in palm oil, contains 37 grams of saturated fat, well above the USDA's recommended daily limit of 20 grams. However, these dry statistics barely resonated with the public. Instead, at their press conference, they used a more effective approach through unexpected comparison. The saturated fat in movie theater popcorn could clog arteries, and a medium serving contains more saturated fat than a bacon and eggs breakfast, a Big Mac with fries for lunch, and a steak dinner combined. This news immediately went viral, and popcorn sales plummeted. This is the power of unexpectedness. Economist George Lowenstein's gap theory explains this. When we notice gaps in our knowledge, curiosity emerges. Gaps create discomfort, and we seek to fill them with knowledge. While we tend to state facts directly, first making people aware they need these facts by creating unexpected puzzles sparks curiosity. After simplicity and unexpectedness, let's discuss the third principle: concreteness. Abstract concepts are typically harder to understand and remember, making communication difficult. To make your message memorable, transform abstract concepts into concrete, everyday actions. Why do we need concreteness? Because it helps the brain maintain focus, just as narrowing choices makes decision-making easier. Consider these two questions. 1. Think of 5 foolish things people have done in the past decade. 2. Think of 5 foolish things you or your child have done in the past decade. Which generates more responses? Clearly the second, because it focuses specifically on you or your child. Aesop's fables are undoubtedly some of the most age-transcending stories. Tales like the tortoise and the hare, the boy who cried wolf, and the fox and the grapes are universally known. Though they address human nature, they're so concrete that even 3-year-olds can retell them after hearing them a few times. Stories with lasting impact are always filled with vivid vocabulary and imagery, like the bathtub full of ice cubes from the earlier story about influence, or those urban legends about fast food chains using genetically modified chickens with 4 wings. These concrete details create vivid mental images. Memory isn't like a single storage cabinet. It's more like Velcro. One side is covered with thousands of tiny hooks, while the other has thousands of tiny loops. When pressed together, countless hooks and loops interlock. The knowledge and impressions already in our brain are like loops, and the more hooks an idea or concept carries, the more likely it is to stick in our memory. Skilled teachers cleverly create more hooks for important concepts. In Iowa, a teacher named Jane Elliott made such an impact that her students remembered her lesson even 20 years later. How did she accomplish this? In 1966, after Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination, Elliott wanted to explain racism and this great man's death to her 3rd-grade students. However, in their all-white town, the students struggled to understand racism. Elliott decided to conduct an experiment to transform this abstract concept into a concrete experience. She divided her class into 2 groups based on eye color, brown-eyed and blue-eyed children, and announced that brown-eyed children were superior. The groups were separated, with blue-eyed children forced to sit at the back of the classroom, and the 2 groups weren't allowed to play together. The results were shocking. Elliott recalled how her students transformed into cruel individuals, with friendships instantly dissolving as brown-eyed children began mocking their former blue-eyed friends. The next day, Elliott reversed the roles, declaring blue-eyed children superior. Years later, students recalled how being in the inferior group made them feel sad, stupid, and even affected their academic performance. Those in the superior group felt happy, smart, and completed tasks more quickly. This simulation powerfully demonstrated the reality of discrimination. Follow-up studies over the next 20 years showed that these students developed significantly lower tendencies toward racial prejudice, and the experiment remained vivid in their memories. Instead of teaching racism as an abstract concept, Elliott created an experience. Imagine all the memory hooks, the sudden contempt from former friends, the despair of feeling inferior, the shock of seeing your own eye color in the mirror. These experiences remained unforgettable decades later. Having covered the 3rd principle of concrete, let's discuss the 4th principle of making ideas memorable, credible. While we typically trust recommendations from friends, experts, or celebrity endorsements, how can we make our ideas credible without such backing? In today's information-saturated society, people have learned to question sources. Cold statistics lack stickiness and struggle to take root in people's minds. A few vivid details often prove more persuasive than a string of numbers. To make statistics more impactful, we can place them in more relatable, everyday contexts. For instance, a survey of over 20,000 employees across major corporations found that only 37% knew their company's goals and mission, only 20% were enthusiastic about these goals, and only 20% fully trusted their company. While these statistics are clear, they remain abstract and forgettable. Stephen Covey, author of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, made a brilliant analogy. Imagine a soccer team where only 4 out of 11 players know which goal is theirs, only 2 care about winning, and only 2 trust their teammates. Isn't that more memorable? This illustrates Covey's point that a company should operate like a sports team, though most companies don't actually function this way. Another way to establish credibility is to let the public verify things themselves. During the 1980 presidential debate between Reagan and Carter, instead of citing high unemployment and inflation rates, Reagan simply asked voters, "Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?" This prompted each listener to reflect on their own situation. Such personal verification proved more compelling and credible than statistical data. So, shouldn't you try to find data that people can relate to their daily lives? What figures can be demonstrated through tangible details? After credibility, let's discuss the 5th principle of memorable ideas, emotion. Mother Teresa once said, "If I look at the mass, I will never act. If I look at the one, I will." Charities understand this well. Your donation isn't going to impoverished Africa as a whole, but to a specific child. Statistics tend to switch our brains into analytical mode, significantly reducing our emotional response. While everyone believes African people face tremendous hardship, credibility alone doesn't necessarily inspire action. Trust needs to be paired with emotional investment to motivate people. But creating emotional investment isn't just for charities. How can we make others care about our message? Many creative ideas use emotional association, connecting with existing feelings. The most reliable approach is to appeal to self-interest. Claude Hopkins, considered history's greatest advertising copywriter, noted that companies often focus on product features when they should emphasize benefits, addressing the central question, "What's in it for you?" Most students have asked, "Why do we need to learn math? When will we ever use this?" An American math teacher, tired of these questions, wrote online, "I tell them, never. You'll never use it." Then I explain that weightlifting isn't about repeatedly lifting heavy metal. It's about being able to easily carry a gas tank or lift your child overhead to make them laugh. Math is weightlifting for the mind. You solve math problems to develop logical thinking skills that will help you become an excellent lawyer, doctor, or architect. This response brilliantly combines unexpected analogies while appealing to everyone's emotional need for self-actualization. Another example involves a design firm helping hospitals improve their workflow. Facing strong resistance to change, they needed to make staff understand the problems. They created a film from a patient's perspective, showing someone with a broken leg entering the emergency room, struggling to find registration instructions, dealing with staff using incomprehensible medical jargon. Finally, lying on a stretcher, the patient sees ceiling tiles passing overhead, hears chaotic sounds without seeing speakers, and experiences long periods of uncertainty. When hospital staff watched this film, they had an immediate emotional response. "Wow, I never realized that these issues didn't really exist for employees before." The company also organized simulation games that awakened hospital staff's empathy and emotions, giving them the motivation to solve problems. The final rule for making ideas memorable is storytelling. Stories are often seen as mere entertainment, and being interested in gossip is considered unproductive. Stories can create a daydream-like effect. However, psychological experiments have proven that this daydream-like mental state not only helps us control emotions, but also solves problems and even develops skills. While mental simulation isn't as effective as actually doing something, it's the next best thing. Choosing the right story equals successful simulation. As story listeners, people aren't entirely passive. Deep down, they're prepared to take action. A good story naturally incorporates most of the factors we discussed earlier: simplicity, unexpectedness, concreteness, credibility, and emotion. It has both simulative and inspirational power. If you want your ideas to be memorable, start by telling a good story. For example, in the late 1990s, Subway launched an advertising campaign highlighting their healthy sandwiches. The first wave of ads used statistics: 7 sandwiches containing less than 6 grams of fat, concise and powerful. However, it wasn't nearly as sticky as Subway's next campaign. This ad was based on Jared's true story, a college student with severe obesity. In his junior year, he weighed 425 pounds, causing serious edema that could lead to heart disease and diabetes. He finally decided to lose weight and happened to see Subway's 7 sandwiches under 6 grams of fat ad. He tried a sandwich, liked it, and designed his own diet: a 12-inch veggie sub for lunch and a 6-inch turkey sub for dinner. 3 months later, his weight dropped from 425 to 330 pounds. After maintaining the same diet and eventually adding walking to his routine when his health improved, he lost a total of 245 pounds. A student newspaper discovered and published the story, which caught the attention of Bob, a Subway franchise owner. Seeing its potential, he contacted a Chicago advertising agency. The agency's team found Jared and called Subway's marketing director, who was skeptical and worried about potential medical disputes. Thanks to the advertising agency president's vision and persistence, they decided to produce the ad for free, launching it on January 1, 2000, perfectly timing it with New Year's resolution season. Within days, ABC, Fox News, and even Oprah called. The results were remarkable. Subway's flat 1999 performance turned into an 18% increase in 2000, followed by a 16% increase in 2001. Extraordinary growth rates. We can check how this story excels in all 6 sticky idea principles. Simple, eat sandwiches to lose weight. Unexpected, challenges the notion that fast food can't be healthy. Concrete, specific waist size and sandwich brand. Credible, visible weight loss results. Emotional, Jared is someone who realized his potential with Subway's help. Like the tale of the ugly duckling who transforms into a beautiful swan through perseverance and determination, ultimately finding success against all odds. This summarizes the main content of Made to Stick. The book's central argument is that stickiness refers to how well your ideas or concepts remain memorable and unforgettable in people's minds. Making your ideas sticky is crucial because the way you communicate can dramatically impact how effectively your message is received. The authors present 6 principles to test whether an idea has stickiness: simplicity, unexpectedness, concreteness, credibility, emotional, and stories. They emphasize that you don't need to be a genius to create remarkable ideas. In fact, most great ideas are discovered rather than created. Success doesn't depend on fame, power, or massive advertising budgets. Anyone can make their ideas memorable with genuine insights and the right communication approach.